Well, what's going on, guys? I'll tell you what, it has been such a cool 2 weeks here diving into the concepts of like a child. And of course, all this comes from this core verse when the disciples were arguing about who was the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. In Matthew chapter 18:3, Jesus says this, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." And so what we've tried to do between Chris and myself over the last few weeks is give elements of kids where we can kind of take a look and actually go backwards, start over, change and turn and really come to God with the heart of a child. And so today I thought I'd talk a little bit about some victory that we've had in the Heggie home, and that is finally Lincoln, our 6-year-old, has gotten to this cognitive development in his life where he's decided to stop hoarding things, stop controlling things, and sharing with his brother. There's this beautiful harmony that Kristen and I begin to enjoy all the time now because these boys are not arguing and fighting over the littlest, tiniest Lego thing, but instead they're starting to share. And I really believe this is something now that we'll see even at 6 years old, that we'll see for both of these boys as they develop and as they become men, of really having an enjoyment of sharing. You know, I think kids don't always get the credit that they deserve when it comes to this, but something brought my attention to it back in John chapter 6 verse 9. This past weekend at the church, as you know, I did the message was all about our part within God's miracle. And the miracle of feeding the 5,000 out of John chapter 6 really began with what? With a child. Now here's what I got to thinking about with this child, right out of John chapter 6 verse 9. It says this, one of the disciples found this boy and said, "Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish." And the disciples asked, "How far will they go among so many?" What we talked about on Sunday is that there's this interesting thing that happened within this child's heart where he decided that the gift and the possession that he had, instead of holding on to it tightly, coveting it, and not sharing it all, what he did was he gave of what he had, even though it wasn't enough, for God to work a miracle in the lives of all 5,000 people. When I got off the stage, I talked with a friend of mine and he said, "Pastor, listen, I don't think that the child was the only one out of 5,000 that actually had fish and bread with him." And of course, I right away didn't even think through it. I said, "Well, of course he did, because there's nothing written. No one else had food." He said, "Do you really think out of 5,000 people that a young boy was the only one that had provisions for the day?" And it got me to thinking, what if in this whole entire story there were others that had provisions, there were others that had with them meals set aside, but it was theirs, and the only one willing to share, willing to give unto the Lord that which was his, was this young boy. It just blew my mind. And I think it's something that I think that you and I really need to consider in our life's walk with the Lord. You know, when we get to certain points in our life with the things that God has given us, many times those gifts, as we talked about on Sunday, become God's. They become precious to us. Whether it's the children that we have, the finances, our bank account, our 401k, our car, our house, our jewelry, go down the line. There's things that each one of us possess that we actually matters to us. But I think what we see here in this is that there's a call for you and me to be like a child and be willing to share. The beauty in all of this is that I think children have a different perspective when it comes to sharing. So you think as adults, and when we start to accumulate, whether it's our talents or our time, again, our finances, giftings, money, however, whatever you want to say, what happens for us is we become that what we want to control. We want to control the gift and we guard it with all of our heart because we're afraid of losing it. But a child is so innocent that he realizes, if I give it away, I'm going to get more. I'm going to have an opportunity to get more, whether it be through just the circle of life and time, or what that child can do just to gain it back through hard work. My point is this, is that a child seems to hold his possessions with open hands, with the ability for others to experience and love and cherish the same thing that they have. My sons are always wanting me to see and hold that which is important to him. Whereas us as adults, we tend to covet, tend to hold tightly, and somewhat strangle the very life that gift is supposed to give. And so when you look at this, the feeding of the 5,000, I want us to remember that the heart of a child is one that looks at a need and says, hey, whatever I have, I'm going to participate in making it better. Are we doing that as adults? Are we doing that as Christians? Are we giving of what God has given us? We have been blessed to be a blessing. Or are we holding it so tightly where we've choked the life out of it? I want you to consider this today as we're coming to a close here on our Like a Child series. I think this right here could be the linchpin to everything. What you've been given by God, freely, open-handedly held by you? Or is it something that you've coveted and no longer are giving away? That decision starts with you. I love you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day.